Greetings all, this is Hairy Nick. How is everyone out there going? Thank you all so much for the response to the last video we did here on the channel. That was excellent, I really do appreciate that. In case you missed it, the last video we did was talking about the future of X-Wing and the way AMG is handling their 2.5 rule set for the game. Now this video is not going to be another critique of that per se. I just want to encourage you, if this is the first time you are here on the channel, first of all, like and subscribe and hello. Head over to that video if you want to sort of talk about the rule set in general and your general thoughts. That's the best place to have that kind of discussion. Today in this video, I wanted to chat about some of the point structure and the way it's affecting the game right now. Specifically, talking about the loss of granularity going from the 200 point structure we'd had with FFG into the 20 point structure we have with AMG, and how to help balance the game out. It's a lot more challenging when we don't have that extra granularity. Every point on a ship is essentially worth what was 10 points in the old point structure. So there's going to be some teething issues. And look, there was teething issues from first to second edition as well. This is not just this new point structure's fault. I think there are certain things I want to look at and say, hey, we need to fix this, this, and this. And realistically, what we're going to talk about in this video is the lower point ships, some of those generic pilots that are having real problems finding their place in the game right now. First of all, I'm not an AMG tester. I am just speculating, and yes, obviously we've had 2 point structures within 2.5 already. The initial 2.5 point set and the updated one we just got recently. So AMG has done all the hard work here. I'm just sort of going, hey, just fix that little bit, just fix it a little bit over there, and we're done. So I'm not taking credit for any of this kind of stuff. I'm just trying to make suggestions here. So with that in mind, I want to talk about the ships which I think are a key part of making list building viable, making creativity within list building viable, because this is such a big part of the game for so many of us. I know it's the big thing that got me interested in the game first up. Having that creative outlet of making your own X-Wing list and being able to express yourself in that way. Now, when 2.5 first launched, we had basically one unique pilot on every faction that was worth 2 points with super skinny builds. For example, Scum faction, an example of something I've actually flown myself, Adressing, on the Z95 Headhunter. This pilot was 2 points with no points upgrades at all. And there were similar things on other factions that, basically named pilots, you don't get to have any upgrades, or you have like the one free upgrade that ship gets. And that was kind of like the spice you got with it. Problem with that is these pilots by and large invalidated generic 2 point pilots. What would be the point of taking a generic Z95 Headhunter over Adressing? That just doesn't make any sense. Even within other factions, we're not talking about unique pilots. There are several cases where the generic pilots and maybe 1 or 2 unique pilots all cost the same points, and there is simply no incentive to taking those generic pilots. Because not only do those unique pilots have a pilot ability, they also have the same, if not more, upgrade points. I understand that moving forward, AMG have very much taken on the classic FFG approach of favouring named pilots. The problem is, it's okay to favour them from a meta standpoint, but when you make it completely unviable to fly these things at all, that's a problem. Okay, so here in front of me, I have yet another squad builder. By the way, I know I say this a lot, and if you're new to the channel, I cannot sing the praises of this website enough. It is the best X-Wing list builder out there, bar none. If we have a look at what you're doing when you go to build a list, you can see as you're rifling through the different ships, on the right-hand side of the screen, it actually tells you the points range that this ship exists in. In other words, I'm just hovering over the Separatist Rogue Class Starfighter. The points are either 4 or 5 points on that ship. This is also, I didn't actually know that this was a thing on this website. I just discovered this today. Dead useful when you're in the middle of building a list and you just want, I just need a 4 point ship to fill this list out. Bam, right there. Information as we need it. And I want to start with the Separatists actually, because I want to talk about the Vulture class droid fighter. I think this is probably the most relevant ship I want to talk about today. Certainly in terms of the effect AMG's new rule structure has had on generics, this has probably taken the biggest hit, apart from X-Wings, although the point structure went some way to fix that in the last adjustment. So I don't want to harp on about X-Wings too much, but definitely want to talk about the Vulture here. So if we bring it up here, the Trade Federation drone, this is the most basic ship in the game. It is fundamentally the weakest in terms of its stat line. No, it's not strictly worse than any other ship in the game. It's in some ways better than like Z95 Headhunters in the way that it can fly. But just from an overall balance perspective, it's basically the worst ship in the game. As a result, the Separatists do get this ship at 2 points as a generic pilot. Good start, good start. The issue we have with this, and I think most people who have tried list building with the Separatists up to this point can easily spot this. We have the Trade Federation drone Initiative 1 here at 2 points with 0 points worth of upgrades. So it's got grappling struts basically stapled onto it, and it can take independent calculations, which there's almost never any reason to do it with a Vulture Droid, but anyway. If you go through the pilots, we can actually field several other options at 2 points, and this is part of the problem I'm talking about here. If we just go up here, the Separatist drone is just better in every way. This is annoying. Initiative 3 has 3 points worth of upgrades and can also take a missile as well. There's almost no case where you'd want to take that Trade Federation drone. Suffice to say, well, I guess arguably, if you wanted to initiative match, you know, your Initiative 1 pilots, they flew together and they could block better, I guess. That's not really a good justification overall for most lists in most situations. Also, the Hull Shell prototype, a semi-unique pilot, which is again just a little bit better as well. 1 more point worth of upgrades. It is Initiative 1, but that, you know, pilot ability more than makes up for that. And also DFS 081 as well, Initiative 3. While a friendly ship at range 0 to 1 defends, it may spend 1 calculate token to change a crit result to a hit result. Certainly, there's no good reason to take even a Separatist drone over this. So you can see the problem. As we go through all these various 2-point ships, we're basically invalidated a couple of pilots. Basically, DFS 081 and the Hull Shell prototype are really the only viable pilots here. Now, you can make the argument that, yes, oh, well, after we take DFS 081, then after we take, 2 Hull Shell pilot prototypes, yeah, then we're out of unique options. We have to start going to the cheaper guys, and I accept that to a certain extent. However, that basically autofills your list at that point. We're at a stage where you are taking a whole bunch of vultures and you're forced to take certain pilots first over other ones. The old point structure allowed us to have a lot more finesse in the way we build out these lists. We could take the Trade Federation drones with sometimes missiles, and that was a little bit cheaper than the next one up, and a little bit cheaper than the one before that. And there was so much more granularity. So we had different options. Either AMG introduces more granularity by increasing the points cap to, say, 30 or 40 points. Just to sort of hedge off that discussion, no, I don't think that's a good idea. I think that's another rules change that the community just doesn't want right now. But it probably would work, though, having said that. Or we look at these pilots and go, okay, really we should be stacking the points more towards the lower end of this. We should be giving the Trade Federation drones more options in terms of their points. And it certainly makes sense from a balancing point of view. We can see that there are no missiles on here, but if we go to the Seppi drones, what have we got here? For example, we have the energy shell charge missiles, which could be interesting on the Trade Federation drones. Now, I know in the old language, that was equivalent to what 23, 24 points, whatever it was at various points in the meta of 2.0. So you could make the argument that that's too far above a 2-point ship. My response to that is, I don't really care. We've lost granularity. We need a way to address this issue. This could be the kind of thing that makes a Trade Federation drone viable over a Separatist drone, and arguably over a Hull Shell. The Hull Shell can already take that, but maybe a way we balance that out is we don't allow the Hull Shell prototype to take missiles. For example, the ability on Horse Prototype is after an enemy ship in your bullseye firing arc at range 0 to 2 declares another friendly ship as the defender, you may perform a calculate or target lock action. And that's interesting because nothing about energy shell charges kind of works with this in tandem. You could make Horse Prototype go down to 3 points so they couldn't take energy shell charges, in which case they would be forced to take Discord missiles, or you could just remove the missiles off of them entirely, which, yeah, I know that their ability is kind of pointing you in the direction of taking target lock so you can get a missile off. But that, in my mind, seems to make a lot of sense. It's almost like we're rewarding you for taking a worse pilot by giving you one particular unique, interesting upgrade for that pilot. It's a bit of a delicate balancing act, I will say, thinking about all this right now. I'm just doing it live here on my computer. And maybe that's the biggest challenge here. Maybe just that loss of granularity is just too much for this game to handle right now. Having said that, I think there are some key things we can look at. And yeah, this is one of them. Particularly in the situation where we have two different generic pilots, Trade Federation drone and Separatist drone, I would like to see in most cases with pilots like this, the lower end pilot getting access to maybe some special weapons or some kind of tech, where the higher end one maybe gets access to a talent or something like that. Now, I know the Vultures don't have talents, but just as an example, that could be quite interesting. Maybe the Separatist drone could have access to the standardized modifications. Maybe that could be something that they have over the Trade Federation drone. There's got to be a bit of give and take here, and right now it's just this pilot's better, these ones are worse. You'll only field these pilots when you get through all the other unique options first, which just kind of feels bad when we're doing list building. Let's move along here. I really want to talk about the Scum faction, particularly with the Z95 Headhunter. So in front of me, I have my collection of Z95s. I wanted to bring them out for this video. Suffice to say, I really enjoyed this ship. I think it offers players a lot of creativity, specifically when I got that first Scum and Villainy pack in first edition, where you got all the different cards with different colourful ships. I had to paint all of them. I actually do own an Adressing Arc somewhere in my collection. Now, as I said, I've moved home recently, so a few things have gone missing in boxes somewhere, but he'll turn up somewhere. And this ship was awesome, because this ship actually offered some really good filler on the Scum faction. It's not always been all that viable, but suffice to say, 3 points. This isn't going to see play at 3 points. Come on, guys. No. This is an example of a ship that only has one single cost as well. Every single pilot is 3 points. Why would you ever take one of these generics when the Adressing Arc now has 7 points on him, which is kind of cool. It's kind of weird going from the first point structure in 2.5 where Nadru had 0 points. Now he's got 7. I've got to play around with that, actually. That actually seems okay at 3 points. But I want these guys to be viable here. And I think the solution is quite obvious in this case. Both of them should be 2 points. The Binyari Pirate, yep, just with illicit, that seems fine. Maybe the Black Sun Soldier has a talent, but no illicit. Or maybe like a talent and a modification. In case you were wondering what this whole thing here is with the 3.2, with the 3-point pilot with 2 points of upgrade with illicit, it can take Dead Man's Switch. Yeah. In case some of you here are new to the channel, this card is woeful. This is not a good upgrade card at all. In actual fact, it often leads to feel bad moments where you're doing more service to your opponent than yourself. I'm not going to go on a big tirade about Dead Man's Switch. Suffice to say, your opponent gets to choose when your ship gets destroyed, not you. You can try and intentionally get your own ship blown up, but that's just giving your opponent more points. It's silly. It's a silly card. It's definitely not worth 2 points. I would argue it should be 1 or 0 points. 0 might cause issues because of the new point structure within 2.5, but definitely 1 point at the very least. If a Binyari Pirate is not 2 points because it has access to Dead Man's Switch, that is a terrible balancing issue in the 2.5 rule set right now. I'm not spending another point in this ship for Dead Man's Switch. That's really bad. It's quite bad. This should be 2 points, probably as is. give us the option to take Dead Man's Switch anyway. It's not that good. And as I was saying, the obvious thing to do here with Black Sun Soldiers would to be just give them a talent, or maybe I don't think a missile. I think a missile is probably a bit better than an illicit, but give it a different option than a Binyari Pirate, and we're good. I think that's pretty straightforward. If that were the case, then neither would be strictly better than the other one. We'd have a situation where we'd have two very viable 2-point filler ships on the Scum faction, and one of them would be good in Alpha Strike lists, and one of them would be good with more attrition lists. Maybe we could have a Binyari Pirate with 2 points that could take feedback array, so we could have some kind of bug zapper list, which was a lot of fun in first edition. I don't think it was very meta-worthy, but essentially you just go up to your opponent's ship with feedback array and just zap them over and over again. Doesn't matter if they're running an ace. You just get damage on them, and it feels really good. And it's very, very dumb and fun. And I like to do dumb and fun things in this game. Having said all that, yes, the 3 points for the 3 named pilots is absolutely fine. I have no problem with that whatsoever. It's just these two here. And also, there are no other 2-point pilots on the Scum faction, bar one. And that is this little chap here, the autopilot drone. If you're making a Scum list and you have 2 points spare, I guess you can put on the autopilot drone, but you probably, as the points are now, just change the ships you're using. You don't want to just field an autopilot drone by itself if it can't dock into the Falcon. It's just handing your opponents points at that stage. Mind you, so is deficit scoring. Another thing I could go on about for ages, but let's not do that right now. Let's go over to the Rebellion and the Empire faction. In actual fact, let's just jump on the Rebellion first. I have the exact same issue here with the Rebellion as I do with the Scum faction. No point going on about it here. Bandit Squadron and Tala Squadron should be both 2 points with different kinds of upgrade options. Again, Tala Squadron should probably have a talent. Bandit Squadron, maybe a modification, maybe a missile, arguably. Again, that's a bit of a hard thing to balance out, but that's fine. Let's move over to the Empire faction, and this is quite interesting because we have the TIE Fighter sitting at 2 points. If anything, I'm just showing this as an example of, hey, they got one right. They got one of these 2-point ships right. In actual fact, if we have a look at the TIE Fighter in general, it's basically all 2s and 3s. We have Howl Runner here at 4 points. I think that's a good call. Howl Runner probably does represent 4 points worth of value in a TIE Swarm. But hey, look at this. They're all 2 points. That's cool. Again, I still think we want to be looking at the way we have upgrades. But in actual fact, if we have a look at this, hey, look, AMG, you've already done the thing I wanted to do. Yay! Academy Squadron Pilot with a modification, Black Squadron Pilot with a talent. Perfect. There is no good argument to say that one is strictly better than the other. Yeah, great. I'm a big fan of that in general. Not sure what Obsidian Squadron Pilot's doing here by themselves. Initiative 2 with nothing. Cool. They may as well just delete this pilot if they're going to do something like that. I don't understand. And if we have a look at the named pilots, yeah, ISB Jingoist with an illicit. I wasn't aware of that. That's cool. Again, just a different kind of upgrade. Valen, Rudor, and Wampa both have fewer upgrade points. Cool. Nice. That works really, really well. Interestingly enough, they still don't have all the same kind of upgrades. Yeah, they've both got talents, which is a little bit of a feel bad for the Black Squadron Ace, but it's got another point over Valen Rudor. I've always said that TIE Fighters in this game are often treated as the best way to balance it out. They're like the benchmark of how ships are designed. And you basically look at the point structure of a TIE Fighter and you build from there. It feels weird just looking at this in depth. Obviously, I did a bit of planning before recording this video, but there's always going to be more things I realize as I'm recording the video, and that is TIE Fighters seem to have a lot more love and care put on into them than the Z95, which is kind of sad. I always think the Z95 really should be that ship that's treated as the benchmark ship because it is the fairest ship in all sense of the word. It has the fairest amount of attack and defense, the fairest amounts of health, the fairest dial in all of X-Wing. Yeah, sort of balancing against the TIE Fighters always felt weird to me, but that's okay. One thing I do want to mention here, we got the Resistance and the First Order. And in actual fact, if we have a look at these cases, the only 2-point ship on the Resistance is BB-8 in the Resistance Transport, which is fine. That's just a little dorky ship. That could be arguably 3 points, but I think it's fine at 2 points personally. And the most basic ship on the First Order actually is a 3-point ship. So neither faction has good consistent access to a 2-point ship. And while I don't think that's a good thing necessarily, I like as much flexibility on each faction as possible. I will say, if they're going to be factions that don't have access to 2-point ships, the sequel factions, yeah, I can see the logic behind that. They're meant to be upgraded versions of the original Civil War era ships. So it feels a bit more justified on these two factions. In any case, if we have a look at the First Order, for example, their most basic ship is an FO TIE Fighter. And an FO TIE Fighter is just better than a TIE Fighter. So can you really justify making that 2 points? It's probably going to really squeeze the design space even more if we try and make this 2 points by, then trying to put the same logic that we did with the TIE Fighter into this. We'd have to crush down the upgrade points even more at that point. And I don't know if I like that. Yeah, it can take automatic targeting priority and biohexacrypt codes. That feels pretty good. I quite like that. And obviously if there's any kind of 2-point upgrade that could take in the future, hyperspace tracking can't go on them. It is relevant. Yeah, I don't know. I think the FO TIE Fighters make sense at this point structure. I don't really think they have the ship that justifies it necessarily. So I think just on these two factions, this is okay and this is excusable. But as we can see, there's issues with basically all factions. The last one I want to finish on is the Republic faction. We have the V19 Torrent, which basically starts at 3 points as well. And this suffers from the same issue as the sequel era factions, but I don't think there's any good reason for it to. I don't see why a basic V19 can't be 2 points. That just seems very odd to me. In actual fact, we have the same issue here where... No, we have an even worse issue here. The generics are 4 points, while the named pilot with more upgrade points is 3 points. Yeah, that's kind of weird. These guys here should at least be 3 points. I think you could argue and make them 2 points, personally. I mean, if we have a look at the stats of a ship... yeah, it's basically a chunkier Z95, kinda. It's got 5 health over 4. Yes, there's no shield, so, but it's got talon rolls and stuff like that. I think it just needs just one at 2 points. It could be this basic little blue squadron protector, and the gold squadron could... again, we could have this whole same thing where we have them both at 2 points, where the blue squadron has a modification, the gold squadron has a talent. Easy, done, balanced. And that just makes perfect sense. I don't know why this is 4 points with 4 points worth of upgrades. It just seems like a massive feel bad. I really don't understand this part of it. And ultimately going forward, this is one of my biggest problems with the rule set right now. That and deficit scoring, but this all folds back into deficit scoring. If long term we're going to keep deficit scoring in the game, which I don't think we should, but if we are... this needs to be ironed out as best as possible. If we can fix up these lower point pilots, we have flexibility within the list. It's not like you take your 3 favourite pilots and it just lands on 18 points and you're in the scum faction. Well, too bad. You don't get to use those pilots unless you want to always give your opponent 2 points at the start of the game. Yay! No, we don't want that. We don't want that in X-Wing. We want a more equitable way of playing this game. I don't think there's really a good argument to keep deficit scoring in the game beyond 17 points. I think what we should do with deficit scoring moving forward is if you have a list that's 17 points or below, yes, then deficit scoring applies. In those cases, if you've built a list that uses 17 points or less, you are directly trying to deprive your opponent of ships that they can blow up. You are actively trying to deprive your opponent of an opportunity to destroy ships. You're actively causing feel bads at that point. But when we have deficit scoring at 18 and 19 points, it's just punishing lists for not falling neatly into this new point structure, which so many things don't right now. So I think this has to be addressed. It's my biggest gripe moving forward, and I just wanted to make this video to have, offer a bit of a solution, offer a bit of positivity. I'm not here to harp on AMG and saying, oh, you're ruining the game or whatever. I wanted to go, hey, I think if we just fix up this little part of the game, it's going to lead to some big improvement, and I genuinely do believe that. Anyway, now that rambling's out of the way, thank you all so much for watching. If you'd like to help support the channel, like, comment, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. I don't just say that. Please like, comment, and subscribe. It does actually really help with the engagement on the channel. Also, we have a Patreon where you can support us monetarily. That genuinely does mean a lot. It supports us way better than YouTube ever has been able to. As I said before, ad revenue is just, it's basically non-existent at this point, unfortunately. It's just, us smaller creators do have to rely on things like Patreon. So if you'd like to help get involved with the channel, for $1 a month, you get access to the Patreon Discord where we can hang out and have a bit of a chat and talk about the games we love. With all that in mind, I will catch all of you in the next video.